guess, yeah.
Now it's June.
I guess we have to
For where we're at. So we have to make sure.
I guess, I'm not sure, I would have thought somebody from Yale would be.
You know, I don't know that's edible.
I guess I'll. So I'm not sure if anybody from Yale is here to introduce the panel, but I will. I'm the moderator. I'm Patti Melick, partner at Wigan & Dana and chair of our life science practice group. And I think I'm going to let each of the panelists give brief bios. They're not in order of their pictures, but you'll get it. So, Chris, you want to?
Do you want us to do music chairs?
You go ahead.
All right. Let me see. What's my? All right. So my name's Chris O'Donnell. I'm a partner at Pfizer Ventures, and I'm also vice president of Partnering Innovations. I've been with Pfizer for 24 years now. Only been in the venture group for 5 years. Prior to that, I was a medicinal chemist at Pfizer for about 19 years, working in both neuroscience and oncology.
I'm Justin. I'm a senior associate at MRLV, which is the corporate venture group of the U.S. Merck. I've been here for about a year and a half. Prior to this, I was at Johnson & Johnson for about 2.5 years doing early stage business development. And then before that, I was a scientist and did my PhD in lab at Church.
Hi everybody, my name is Alessandra, and actually there is a misspelling my last name, it ends with an O and not A, so if you try to find me on LinkedIn, you won't find me like that. And I've been at Takeda for nearly 13 years. Most of my time is in R&D, both the small molecule oncology and now in cell therapy in GI. I spent time in marketing, medical affairs, and also I was a partner at Takeda Venture for many years, so that's how I have the connection with the ecosystem here. And happy to be part of this panel.
And hi everyone, Paulina Hill. I'm a partner at Sanofi Ventures. I've been there about a year. Prior to that, I spent 10 years on the institutional venture side of things. So I was at Omega Funds for 3 years and 6-7 years at Polaris, which is really an early stage company creation fund doing sort of therapeutics investing across all areas. And then postdoc in the Langer Lab prior to that, so I have a science background.
My name is Jasmina Marjanovic, part of the AbbVie Ventures. Trained scientist, PhD in chemistry, and I've been at AbbVie for 10 years now, started in discovery and then made my way into the ventures team. So, glad to be here.
And Lucio here, part of the LEAPS by Bayer team. Been 7 years now at LEAPS. Prior to that, it was another investment firm called Imperial Innovation in the UK. And been CBO of a company called Silence Therapeutics based in London. Nice to see everyone today.
Okay, so thank you all for joining us. Really excited to have this panel from Pharma, from mostly corporate venture pharma or experience in corporate venture pharma. But I think we'll share with you their insights and ideas and some differences in their sort of corporate philosophies on approaching investing in pharma. So, and also speak to, I hope, the advantages of partnering early with Big Pharma. So, should we kick it off with you, Lucio?
No, but yeah.
Next name.
I thought you were sitting there, that's why.
So we can start with Chris.
Yes, please.
Chris, I think when we talked the other day, you were going to describe, so maybe we start there. I think you mentioned that you'd like to describe some of the different types of partnering funds that you have at Pfizer.
Sure, I'll do this. So this is what he used to do on the Pixis board. He used to be like, oh, what? Let him go first. Yeah, so there's a number of different ways that you could partner with a company like Pfizer. First and foremost, if you're sort of in that early academic stage and you're looking for collaboration to sort of build out your research, we have a group that looks at early science and will fund early science on the order of $100,000 to $1 million per year to do those really important experiments. Many times companies that get funded through those mechanisms at Pfizer become companies that are part of the Pfizer venture portfolio when they eventually gather the data that they're looking to gather. If it looks promising, a lot of the times that's then when they get introduced to me and my team to potentially invest in them. There's other ways of collaborating. There's the Center for Therapeutic Innovation, CTI, where we actually have a group of scientists that partner with academic labs to move projects forward and try to develop them as potential drugs. I would say there's the traditional BD partnership. So if you have a company with an asset that's at sort of an advanced stage of development and you're looking to partner that, Pfizer would definitely be interested in speaking to you, especially if you're focused in the therapeutic areas of interest to Pfizer. You could always look these up on our website, but I'll just tell you it's oncology, inflammation, immunology, internal medicine, and vaccines and anti-infectives. And then, of course, we have a new model called the Ignite model. And this is a partnering where companies will need resources to move their projects forward. Say that it be scale-up resources, drug safety resources, clinical resources, whatever. We have a group of people that will work with companies to provide Pfizer resources to help advance your programs. And so that's a new initiative that started last year. And then finally, the Pfizer Ventures team, the team that I work on, we invest in companies that could be of interest to Pfizer. You've heard panelists earlier this morning that were more traditional VC groups where their primary goal is to make money. Our primary goal is to have a strategic fit with Pfizer and eventually create a company that Pfizer wants to partner with. Now, of course, if we make money, that's a nice thing as well, but that's not the primary objective of our team. So hopefully that helps kick it off, and you can maybe see some of the similarities and differences between what we do and what the other groups up here do.
Okay. Justin, can you speak a little bit to how corporate venture partners differ? Well, so Chris sort of ended philosophically with how the motivations may be a little different than traditional institutions.
I think building off the numerous ways of partnering that you just outlined, it can be confusing interacting with a corporate or with a big pharma. And our role, in addition to making equity investments in therapeutics, our group is we sometimes say non-strategic. We invest both on and off strategy in terms of being agnostic of a company's relation to the broader Merck strategy. We're not optimizing for partnerships within our portfolio. If we make 20 investments and Merck never has an interest in any of those investments, maybe we're not investing in quite the right companies, but it's a little bit floofier in terms of our strategic component. But beyond those investments, we also have a strong role in the ecosystem in connecting the dots between people, both internally and externally. I was talking with some of the panelists. It can be very confusing in knowing what the right avenue is, especially if you're in the earlier stages and you're still developing your business plan. So connecting with someone like me or whoever on our team we can build those introductions or relationships for the company to the right avenues within Merck, whether that means trying to be connected to BD for a sponsored research agreement, which is sort of what I did at my old job at J&J, or if it is an equity investment, but maybe it's not the right fit for MRLB, maybe it's the right fit for another CVC or an institutional. So it's a little bit floofy, it's a lot of relationship building, but us specifically in our fund, we invest only in therapeutics, and we invest in generally early stage preclinical companies, but beyond that, we're very agnostic and just looking for really cutting edge, bleeding edge technologies or assets that can make a strong patient impact.
Alessandra, you can build off of that, but also you, as I understand it, you've had different roles at Takeda, both in Takeda Ventures and now what is a global program lead of cell therapy. So maybe how you look at partnering differently in the two.
Yeah, absolutely. So Takeda philosophy for partnering takes elements that have been already described in the sense that we have the Center of External Innovation that has a BD, Takeda Venture, as well as a group that interacts with academics on their ideas. So similar to what we described before, there are different levels where Takeda can partner and help, both developing an idea in the lab and see if there is a traction and the PI is interested in a spin-off, then the Takeda Venture comes and help creating a company with the academics. Or if it's only an investment, then we invest very early and preclinical. We like a lot platforms, so ability to do and develop a molecule, but also we are now really focused on a specific methodology. We like also artificial intelligence or other technology that can be used also for making a patient impact beyond the therapy. In terms of what is important when you are interacting with Takeda Venture, or Takeda in general, we are very much strategically focused on the pipeline. So there are specific areas of interest, and those are easily available on the website. So if you feel that whatever you are working on, if you have an idea, is a different, original, and you think it can fit there, then definitely you can contact any of us from the BD or Takeda Venture, or even me in the R&D side, and then we can help navigate it inside. And but it has to be something novel, a different way to think about and solving the problem. And as I mentioned before, from the academic side, early side, and then BD, where somebody is maybe in phase 2, there is a more interest, and we can do research sponsorship, we can do partner program, or most of the time acquire the entire company if has a platform that is interested or has a problem that really leads the path. But there are many different ways to do that. Yeah.
And at Sanofi, so Sanofi is a strategic fund. There are some that are more financially oriented, some that are less. Sanofi is in the bucket of strategic, which means that basically every investment that we do has to have some strategic fit with the broader organization. So areas like immunology, rare, oncology, new modalities, those are all areas that Sanofi is in. And those are usually the types of areas and investments that we tend to do. Now, I think strategic can be defined in sort of a loose way as well, right? There's sort of areas that Sanofi is not in today, but maybe wants to have some purview into, like radiotherapeutics is one example, right? And so because we're strategic and Sanofi thinks that's an area to keep it, an important area to keep an eye on, that might be a deal we do, even though it's sort of not something that our parent company is in today. And then in terms of how much we invest, I think some of the differences are also in terms of check size. I know Leaps can write really big checks. We too can write large checks. So essentially, in this market in particular, take the price of crossover investors and write a $20 million check into a Series B company. Lucio and I worked on a deal. By the way, do you prefer Lucio or Lucio or
wherever you.
Any of the above, right? We co-led a Series B deal where we each wrote a $20 million check into a company, a year and a half ago. That would have been crossovers writing those checks, right? And we would have been quote unquote boxed out. But today it's really an opportunity for us, Sanofi and some of the other individuals and funds sitting up here today to really play a more meaningful role in some of these companies. We can also take passive roles, so we can write a $2, $3, $4, $5 million check and not be a lead, but typically like to have a seat at the table in the context of either a board director or an observer seat. So that's the venture side of things. Like others, partnering can also be research collaborations, BD deals, platform BD deals, licensing deals, everything all the way up to M&A.
Yeah, interesting because an earlier panel mentioned sort of, they were mostly institutional VCs, and they mentioned a sort of void right now in the current market, particularly in the Series B. So hearing
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, a lot of the sort of tourists that I think it was Yushni maybe described on the panel that really were placing a lot of bets in crossover rounds into IPOs and then following these companies, they've massively pulled out. And even the sort of pure public and crossover investors are playing more in the public space as opposed to the private space. And so it really is sort of a dearth of capital in those Series B-ish type companies, which is great for us. Right.
Very good deals
Right.
coming up for corporate VC, especially Series B.
that's good. Yeah.
I can talk about Abi Ventures. So we are true strategic investors, so corporate VC team. So we do have to invest in line with our strategy, right? So we will go early seeds and early Series A, and we really wouldn't double down. So if we already have internal efforts in the area, whether it's biology or platform efforts or modality, so those are not investments that they will be looking for, right? So we're really trying to use that bucket of money to kind of supplement internal efforts. And I don't think we are a little bit more shorter-sighted, right? So maybe we think 2 or 3 years ahead in terms of the upcoming technologies and modalities. And when we do make investments, we actually do work closely with our BD team, and we have conversations around is this going to result in a BD deal in a couple of years. So that's kind of our driver to go into some of these areas early. We're not financially driven, we are scientifically driven, although we do have very good returns, and I like to think about it because we do a deep science diligence. We really know that these platforms, modalities, biologies are something that is a good investment, right? And then, of course, 4 therapeutic areas of interest for us: oncology, immunology, neuroscience. Do I need it?
Yeah, well, I think it's really overflow.
Everyone like, yes.
Listen in the other room.
Okay, better?
There's an overflow room, so I think they can't hear it if you guys are over the mic.
Okay. So yeah, so 4 main therapeutic areas that we would invest in: oncology, immunology, neuroscience, and ophthalmology would be what we call on strategy for us. Active investors, similar to previous examples. Smaller checks, but we do look for board presence as well. And what's nice about corporate venture investors, we do have that reach into the R&D organization as well, right? So what we can bring to the table, it's maybe not always the biggest checks, like Leap sometimes does, but we do have that internal expertise that we can tap into, right? So, and we do foster those relationships with our portfolio companies as well. As much as portfolio companies want to interact with our scientists, it is our job to make that happen, right? So to kind of facilitate these interactions as well. Another nice piece about Abi Ventures and Abi BD, as I mentioned, when we do these investments, we do talk to our BD teams, right? So, and that's kind of evolving conversations. Does this make a little bit more sense to do investment at this time and then proceed with the BD, or do we want to do a BD from the beginning, right? So there's a lot of kind of crosstalk in that early part of the communications with the company, and it's great exposure for the company, and also, even if it doesn't happen right now, right, just staying in touch and kind of keeping those conversations live.
So on my side, we are a bit different, and Leaps by Bay was created to be a bit different from other corporate ventures. So Leaps 7 years ago wanted to create a vehicle for fostering innovation and bringing innovation into Bayer. So I was lucky enough to be at the table when this discussion happened, and most of the people at the table wanted to be financially driven. At the same time, the big pharma corporation wanted to have asset in exchange, a bit like Pfizer has been doing for at least 15 years. We are pretty young compared to them. So the idea was like, can we actually bring an hybrid form for the first time? So we are going to be close to our pharma when we want, but at the same time, we can also do independent investment from in a specific area that they don't even do. For example, Blue Rock was one of our first investment. We spent over 100 million in the company. We created a JV, joint venture with Versant, created the company 2 years after the company was ready to go public. Bayer decided to acquire the whole company, marking our first exit. But at the same time, Bayer used Blue Rock as is today the center as a center of cell therapy franchise that Bayer is building. Same was for AskBio that they acquired. Now they have the whole gene therapy activity through the acquisition. So for Bayer, LEAPS is really a jump start into a new technology, a new franchise. We invest in gene editing, we invest in cell therapy, we invest in new antibody platform. And the beauty is that sometimes we can be very strategic and be very focused on what our pharma needs. Other times we can be purely financial. So we always welcome to work with Sanofi, Pfizer, and everyone to create this kind of contrast. If the company is good, you might have, kind of a bidding war, and that's pretty much what we are aiming for. Of course, Bayer, from our side, is going to have the first look at everything we do. But we have over 40 companies in our portfolio, and each of our team members at least 7 to 10 board seats. We always get a board seat. We write tickets between 5 to 50 million. We are not involved in company creation like BI, that they do an excellent work, but we come after, around the Series A. At this stage, we take a board seat, and I think we are helpful on the board. You guys tell us, but helpful to make connection not only with Bayer, but also with other investors. So when it's time to fundraise, LEAPS and wherever is the candidate on the board will help to go to other VC that will be corporate VC or just institutional VC and trying to fundraise. And one big criteria is that we have a big firewall between us and our pharma. Once I sit on a board, my job is to make sure that the board, the company does as best as they can and not really considering if Bayer is going to acquire this or not. And so far it's been working. Of course, it's just 7 years in and you need more to establish. But this way we were quickly able to get into deals with other corporate VC that have been around for longer, and also with institutional VC that they appreciate that we are not just here for the short term, that our strategy might change. For example, any of our company can change, don't want to be in autoimmune. We don't care. We still keep our company and financially stable. While other corporate VC on smaller sites might, the strategy change, so I'm not going to come in the next round. That can create a problem, and we didn't want to start something like that from the beginning. So far we have been lucky to wear both hats, the impact/strategic investor or just financially driven, and seems to be working so far.
So picking up on, and I'll invite anybody to sort of comment on most of these, I guess I should do this. But picking up on something that you touched on, Jasmina, and then you, Lucio, and everybody else, really. A friend had shared with me that they brought on corporate venture in Series B that and I hope you'll all share examples of this and how critical that corporate VC, bringing on that corporate VC fairly early. Series B isn't early to maybe everybody in the audience, but it's fairly early still. How critical it was to the growth of the company and bringing in CMC advice, other advice, introductions to the pharma. The end result was actually that pharma, a big exit because that pharma bought them, but all the creative ways, the validation of the company's technology and visibility within your organization. So if anybody could share sort of the extra added value that CVCs bring in addition to money, obviously.
I'm happy to share from my perspective, being on the institutional side, maybe quickly, and then turn it over to you guys. So for a decade, I was on the institutional side where we were purely financial investors, right? Whether it's an early stage fund or a crossover fund like Omega was or is.
And I'd say we brought expertise to the table in the context of we were obviously a smart team on the institutional side, but it's not like we had any real in-house expertise around CMC or regulatory approvals or even R&D expertise in a very specific space, right? And I think for all of us sitting here, when we're looking at investments, there's usually a KOL inside our company who knows the target better than anyone, or the biology, or the mechanism, or the pitfalls, or the reasons that that's never going to work, right? And why this is interesting, why it could work. And I think we can bring all that to bear to the company after the investment. We can certainly bring it to bear during the diligence process and then after. And I do find that just a nice value add. Hopefully the companies do too, right? In addition to the dollars. Because behind the sort of 10, 20, whatever, $2, $3 million checks we write, we really do see it as our job, or at least I see it as my job, to open up the large organization of Sanofi and add value in a way that extends much beyond me and the Sanofi Ventures team.
Yeah, I'll just echo what Paulina said. I think even at the time of investment, we try our best to be a very smart team, and we use the Merck and our parent organization as an asymmetric resource for insights that other investors may or may not have. And so we think that bringing a CVC into the syndicate is a good thing. Maybe the external investors can, see if they agree or not, but we really do have an in-depth diligence process, and we think most of our peers realize that. And so in the process of investing, we think it's a value add to have us sort of as part of the syndicate. And then similarly, even though, like Lucio, we have a firewall for confidential information, both in the diligence process and for our portfolio companies to the rest of the organization. Everything that's confidential stays within our team of 5 investors. At the same time, if it is of interest to the portfolio company, we set up sort of ad hoc brainstorming sessions with MRL scientists where, there's a lot of topics that there's lots of institutional knowledge at Merck that may not exist to the same extent at our portfolio companies. So whether it's CMC, biomarker development, clinical development, that's something that we've been leveraging more and more for our portfolio companies as they've been maturing.
I guess I could just add to some of these things. Well, first of all, my experience is as a medicinal chemist at Pfizer.
You have real expertise.
Yeah, I've been involved in 20 drugs going from the discovery stage to clinical development. So when I do a diligence on a company, usually there's 20, 30 pages of questions, right, that require detailed answers. And, for the companies I've gone into, they say that this is, super helpful. I usually share my diligence with anybody who might be interested in the company so they could sort of see the insights that me and my team bring to the investment. And even when we don't make the investment, the companies usually, maybe they're just saying this to be nice, but they love the diligence questions because they see how, a company like Pfizer is thinking about their program, where they think the strengths and maybe weaknesses or challenges may be. And we also propose experiments that we think would strengthen the company. As an investor and a board member in companies, I could tell you that, at first companies are a little bit reluctant to open up everything to their investors. But, at least for me personally, having that research experience, many times the companies end up asking me, hey, are you in town this week? Because if you are, can you stop by for an hour? We want to talk to you about something. And usually it's something that they probably don't talk to all their investors about. And it's usually a science-related issue. And they ask, do you have any experience with this? And I would say, a lot of the times I don't, but because I work for Pfizer and I've seen so many projects, I know somebody that has seen that exact problem. And I could either ask that individual for advice on, if you had this problem, what would you do? And they provide it. And if the company wants more detail, I could then bring that individual under the CDA and have them meet with the company to help them work through the issues. I've done this pretty much with every company that I've worked with. I've had companies that have had, that were scaling up compounds for IND-enabling tox studies, and I'm a synthetic chemist by background. So I look at their synthetic chemistry routes and realize that they're not using the best route, only because I know that we've done something very similar at Pfizer. And in one case, it was going to take this company 6 months to make their molecule, and it was mostly because it was going to take 5 months to make the intermediate. Well, I had 300 grams sitting at Pfizer that I shipped to them so that they could do the experiment. And then I shipped them the recipe on how to actually make it on scale, which was much different than what they were doing. So I think that's what a corporate VC can bring to your company. So, we do Series B. I like Series A as well. Series B is only better because there's more data. You've de-risked some of the things, but yeah, I mean, I think that's what a corporate venture should bring to companies.
Definitely, from my perspective, and at Takeda, we have a lot of things in common in the approach that it was just described. But what I found for the company, even if at the end we don't invest in them, they always get something positive out. Because let's say, there is this part that's not convincing, or this model, I'm not sure is the most representative, have thought about something else. So there is always a discussion that leads to a constructive thoughts that can lead then to an investment or not, or if the idea is very interesting, but maybe the company has not quite firm handle or have a firm handle on a particular topic, we wanted to hear from them later, right? So there is a routine every year. You check on them and you say, so how did you advance? And you see what you build upon, what was our feedback. So it's not one touch and go and that's it. You never see the investor anymore. So even if the initial pitch doesn't work, doesn't matter. If you feel that they feel that is interesting, what you're doing keeps coming back and you want to give an update, the love updates. And, and maybe at that point you reach a critical mass where there is a more concrete interest in something. So don't consider that somebody, is not coming and being positive at the beginning is the end of it. So definitely I would suggest it to continue.
So again, I think you've all sort of touched on this, but maybe explore a little bit more if anybody wants to jump in. We talked about the void you can fill in Series B. Chris, you mentioned Series A is okay. Because there's probably people in the audience who are very early, right? And as you said, very early, maybe too early for you to invest until they've done some more of the suggestions. But when is sort of point of entry and how Justin, I think you spoke to this a little bit, like finding the right person to speak to.
Yeah, I think there's a couple sides to this. So one is the feedback aspect for when you're very early. If you're truly not ready to spin out, feedback can be extremely valuable, and we recognize that. So we really try our best to be transparent and open with the feedback. Sometimes it's hard. We can't give as in-depth feedback to every single company that approaches us as we want, but we do really put an enormous amount of effort into our declines, and we hope that is reflected on the other end as well. If it makes sense, there are avenues. We don't have as many as you described in terms of the non-dilutive funding for the very early stages, but those do occur. We can set up very warm introductions to our BD team if that is something that makes sense, if it's close enough to the strategy. But beyond that, we also have very good relationships with other investors, including CVCs that do build or institutionals that build as well. So, we talk with a lot of friends and peers at Atlas and Third Rock. So if it's something that requires a build, and if it's a bit too early, we can make those introductions. We met with the Curie Bio team earlier for this exact reason, because we recognize there are opportunities that are very, very interesting to MRLV, but because we're only a team of 5 and we don't have the capabilities to build external companies, that we need these relationships and rely on the ecosystem as a whole to work together to bring some of these ideas forward.
Sorry, I just wanted to add an additional angle. A few years ago, Takeda Venture launched an initiative requesting idea from employee about developing any idea. There was so you will send your idea.
based on your knowledge or something that you have been thinking about for quite a while, and the Takeda Venture team will look at that and then prioritize that if something is interesting, can create a small internal team just to kind of really pressure test it. Some of the assumption, maybe use some of the wet lab to do the initial, and then if that keeps coming on and that, positive, then the venture team will help creating a company. And there was a plan also to expand it outside our wall in the ecosystem. Anybody could come and pitch their idea. And so I think that is also another venue where, pharma can help the ecosystem, even if you are not coming to us with an idea that is super well formed and everything. There are many different venues, even brainstorming or thinking about something that you are particularly excited about and having feedback on my work or it might not work, right? What is missing? So thinking outside a little bit more the classical venture opportunity.
Yeah, I could just add, I appreciate the discussion around how it's hard to find the right person to talk to, especially when there's so many different funding mechanisms. So, I guess I'll volunteer for anybody in this crowd. If you have an idea that you want to work on with Pfizer, you could talk to me, and I will, if I'm not the right person to help you, I could direct you to the right place. I would suggest, going to Pfizer.com, looking at areas of interest for us for partnering, from very early stage to late stage. That will give you a sense on whether or not your phone call is going to be well received or your email is going to be well received, right? Because there's a lot of times I get emails for investing in homes in Florida, right? And obviously, this person hasn't done any homework on what we're doing. So yeah, do your homework and then send a note, and then there's usually contacts as well on the Pfizer side on if it's an early stage or late stage. And just for context, if you're looking for BD is usually late stage. It's usually in clinical development, and then anything earlier than that is emerging science or ventures.
Yeah, to add to the doing your research, for the last week, every 2 days, I've received an email about a space investment, to which finally today I had to say, we're a pharmaceutical company, we don't invest in space. So I would say, obviously that's very far out there, but certainly doing your research and being familiar with the portfolio of the parent company. For example, if you are, approaching Sanofi and you're doing something in psoriasis, right? I think that it would be really good to know what we have in anything derm, right? Atopic derm or psoriasis or anything like that. I think it'd be great to look at the pipeline and at least be aware of what Sanofi has, as opposed to, the opposite, right?
Yeah, and I guess I can just add, I always say that it's never too early to start the conversation, right? It might be too early to invest, but we can talk, and we do see a lot of things, and then we can also make the connections easily, whether it's going to be connecting with the investors or kind of pulling a couple of different projects together to make something tangible is another avenue, and then, everybody on this panel has done this before.
For us, we are working more on since in the last 6 years, we invest heavily into Series A. Now we're looking something that is closer to IND within 6 to 12 months and getting more into the clinical stage. And this is just to avoid to be too early again. It's basically a portfolio strategy to get better into the clinic and faster into the clinic. As Paulina was saying, there is a lack of crossover investor at this stage. And with our new strategy, I think that this year we are implementing with Series B and Series C most of the time, we really look at 6 to 12 months to an IND or even starting clinical trial within the next 6 months, because there is a lack of crossover investor coming in, so we actually can get the best deal on for the dollar. And so far it's been working well also for Sanofi, because we work together on a few deals. And so I think we are avoiding too early at this stage, and also because when we go too early, we still have 40. We had like 6 exit and 3 acquisition, but we still have 40 companies in our portfolio. So it's really hard to find a company that doesn't overlap with something we already have. While if we get into the clinic, we can always justify this as a late stage asset that can actually give some early data for a company that is 2 years behind with a different type of molecule within the same therapeutic area. So we're a bit more on the late stage, at least for this year. The strategy has been set to avoid super early, but there are plenty of VC that are doing that, and being in connection with them is essential.
Okay, thank you, all panelists. I'm happy to open it up to questions from the audience if anybody has a question.
Yeah, I'm definitely more interested a little bit in the partnerships and strategies. It's the company I'm very newly involved in is a young startup, but the service and software that we have is specifically for the biotech and pharmaceutical industry. We think we can add a lot of value there. What's the best way to navigate that if we think, hey, we might be in the right same therapeutic area? Is it, like you mentioned, just going onto websites or, really, because I think real validation before even getting any money in is, hey, if you have a partnership that's really loving what you're doing, then I believe the money will eventually come, and whether it's through that partnership or others. Yeah.
In my case, it's something that we receive probably 25 to 35 pitch a week. So it's really hard to reply on time to everyone and be actually giving also an insight. So the best job to do on the other side is to do actually the homework. And sometimes I receive company within checkpoint inhibitor, and we already have 3 companies in that space within our portfolio. So there is no way I can invest in one. So looking at the company and have a very precise strategy after going to a corporate VC is essentially you do the homework and check who is actually having a competitor in the space or having something similar. Those are probably the ones that are going to just talk to you but have some competitive intelligence done and nothing else. So it's also, as an entrepreneur, you should look into what kind of money you're looking for and what kind of person you're putting on the board. I work with pretty much everyone in here. They are all super nice guys, but I doubt that they can have 3 checkpoint inhibitors. You come with another company, even if it's amazing, they will actually invest into it. It's really rare. So doing the homework and making sure you know who you're talking to is the best. And by the way, I bought a house in Florida.
I just wanted to add, on top of Takeda Venture, we have a digital venture. So there is a group that specifically looks at digital health and any software or any application that can be used, for example, to read the outcome of therapy in patient or help patient navigate the treatment or something like that. So anything that is interested in a digital, we have a different group of people that will look at that. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll just chime in really quickly. We have a similar situation where our fund only does companies that are developing their own therapeutics program, but there's a second fund at Merck called GHI, Global Health Innovation, that does invest in digital health, enabling services, technologies type investments. And so when those come in, we will refer them to GHI. On the BD side, I can just speak from my previous job when I was at J&J. I did some data science, digital health related partnerships. It is very difficult because from the pharma side, we're often a little behind the times, and it's not just us too. The payers are a little bit behind the times, hospitals are a little bit behind the times. So really making sure you've spoken to the right people on each aspect of where your technology or software might be touching can help pharma understand the difficulties and the pros and cons of what your technology can do. Is there actually going to be market penetration, things like that? Like everyone said, you have to do your homework. We get an inordinate amount of pitches per week, and like I said, we try our best to give feedback. But if the partner doesn't do as much work, we are less inclined to do as much work also. So it really is a given.
Yeah. So I'll just add. So with Pfizer Ventures, we do about 80% therapeutics, 20% tools, investments. We do have a digital group at Pfizer. So if it's a software or something that could help with say our clinical development, we've invested in that space, but we also would be interested in collaborating in that space if there's an interest there. So feel free to reach out, and if it looks like there's a fit, I'll try to make a connection. And Lucio, I have a vacation home now. Right? Rental.
All right. Did I see another hand?
You want one?
So I'll ask a question. So there was good talk of the amounts of money provided, good talk about all sorts of excellent, deep talent from the big side. But I wonder if you'd share what kind of quids Big Pharma wants in various types of quids at different layers and levels of investment that small companies should kind of keep an eye on, even though you're all, see, we don't have the small representation in the panel of the dealing with big, having been on both sides.
You're asking what should you be wary of as an entrepreneur?
Not wary, eyes open, because obviously investment comes with agreements, which comes with intentions, which the small who's receiving the money wants to be eyes open on, right? It's not wary necessarily, although sometimes wary might be the right word, but in good business, it can be just good eyes open, but knowing what you're walking into. But I didn't hear a lot of what Big wants in return for what Big provides. So I was just asking you to kind of round that a little bit.
In our case, we come without string attached, and I can guarantee Sanofi, Pfizer, AbbVie, they do the same, because I will never do a deal where with them if they have some kind of rights of first refusal of negotiation and I don't. So it's in Boston, especially in Boston, it's almost impossible to force this down to a company because the other investor would be very wary of these. One thing I would say, if I was an entrepreneur and I would talk to CVC, I would try to understand how they are linked to the strategy, and because Big Pharma change strategy all the time. So you want to know is these companies of interest today, but next fundraise, they might not be around because they changed their strategy. And so this is the point that we try to avoid when we started Leaps by Bayer, to be there for the long run and make ourselves the partner of choice for an entrepreneur. Other small fund, they might change their strategy and they are not allowed to get more million in a company that is not a strategic fit. So that would be my first worry or red flag. If they can go through the IPO process, this is another big upside. But most of the time in Boston, no one can come with string attached or nasty stuff hidden in a contract, because there are going to be other corporate VC looking at this and it's not going to go well.
Yeah, and I can just add to this, right? So we all want a big partner of choice, right? Whether it's a venture investment or it's a BD partnership that we are talking about here. So it's a small town, right? We all kind of work together and then play in the same area. So reputation is big. So, following on the investments, to Lucio's point, or setting up appropriate deals, if you're talking about BD partnership, is something that everybody is trying to follow on through.
Yeah, same from us. No strings attached, and we back our companies even if our strategy changes. And I think if I was an entrepreneur, that's, to Lucio's point, that's exactly where I'd dig in, is if in 5 years you're doing a follow-on financing and the big company is no longer in that space, would they still write that check into whatever series you're doing at that point? I think that's the most important question.
Yeah, also for us, no string attached, and Takeda Venture will continue to support the company till a meaningful exit. That could be something that comes internally because it's mature for the pipeline, or even if the strategy is not there anymore, we just make sure that it's a meaningful exit. But just to add what have been said before, from the entrepreneur side, I would leverage a lot any other a network of other entrepreneurs that has something to do with these investors. They are interested in your company. So you can already start seeing if somebody had strange experience or something, because of course the ecosystem is small, and investor that kind of leave and does not participate is not always the partner of choice for the next investment. And so reputation is very important. But still, I would reach out to your network and do some groundwork on the investor themselves and say, how do they behave in the past when the strategy changed?
Yeah, we're the same, especially because we invest off strategy explicitly in many cases, where we support our companies all the way through exit. There are some cases where we are approached, or we as in Merck, not MRLV, for BD, and an equity investment makes sense. So something like the Orna deal with Merck, that was had an equity component, but that was transacted entirely by BD. So we're happy to explain that to partners. If there's confusion, our job is to educate the different avenues of interacting with Merck. I think I have seen a small number of cases where that has happened at a much smaller scale. Orna is a bit of a unique case, especially because we're talking about partnering early with Pharma. I mean, they're early, but in terms of dollars, they're not quite as early. At my old job, some JJDC deals kind of went to BD first, so to my team, and then ended up going to JJDC and had some very, very soft rights, and they have their job is to manage the reputation as well. Everyone knows this. I think it's important to ask these exact questions to the CVC or whoever you're interacting with, whether it's BD or the CVC. Where does the funding come from? Who are the stakeholders who approve future financings? And what happens if the strategy changes? Because if they don't have very good answers like everyone here had, then maybe that's something you need to dig in deeper.
Yeah, I would say on the venture side, same thing that you've heard earlier. We don't take rights to any of the assets. We will have, usually in a side letter, what's called a most favored nations clause, which means that if you then make a deal with somebody else that is more favorable than our deal, that we get the same deal, right? So similar to what Lucio was saying, that if, I won't invest in a company where, one of the other corporates has sort of a right to the asset that I would be interested in. Now, that's not to say that there aren't different mechanisms of funding at Pfizer that would come along with rights. Obviously, BD deals. We do have another fund called the PBGI, Pfizer Breakthrough Growth Initiative, and this is mostly investing in public companies, specifically investing in an asset to help move it through the clinic, and usually that comes with a right to Pfizer to see the data first or to have the first refusal or negotiation or something like that. I think if you're really early stage and you're doing a collaboration with any company, what you want to spell out at the end is who gets access to the data. So if Pfizer's generating data for you and we end the collaboration, do you get to use the data? Obviously, that's really important to you because, that's the whole reason you did the collaboration. So if that's not something that you thought about, make sure you're thinking about things like that when you're doing sort of the early non-dilutive type financing strategies.
Maybe time for one more question, if there is.
Is that one question?
You may have talked already a little bit about this, but what is the criteria for successful, investment for you guys? If you have so many, how do you narrow it down?
Well, in our case, is really the strategic fit. It is something that is of interest, and also, we do landscape work. When you present your idea, we have a sense of what are the competitors out there. So, and that's something that the CEO or whoever is coming pitching needs to understand. What is the landscape and how they are different compared to the other. I always say, why should I give the money to you and not somebody else? What is so special? So you needed to look at what you are bringing and really make sure that you fully understand the position of what you are bringing compared to everything that is around. So that's for me, it's very important. And the second is IP. Who is going to block anybody else to do exactly what you are doing, right? So because, if we invest and then until now 6 months later, somebody's going to do exactly the same thing, and just we lose everything, right? So understand that how is it different? So what is it, to be honest, simplistic, but what's the question you're trying to answer? It seems a simple question, but a lot of time people struggle to answer that. They say, well, you know, I don't know, if they are developing something in oncology, there are many people with breast cancer, a drug more is always needed. It's not true. Because especially for people that have extensive experience in R&D till the end on the market, having an additional drug doesn't mean that that drug is successful. Because unless you are able to articulate the position where that drug is going to play, and why is better, or what is the question that they are trying to answer, is not going to work. So if the goal of the CEO is to be acquired, they need to understand they need to speak the language of the acquirer. For the big pharma, the fact that, you know, the technology is 20% better in doing whatever other technologies are doing, that is interesting from a scientific point of view. But at the end of the day, it translates to what? So you need to think about and put it in the shoes of 2-3 steps ahead. So you need to be able to articulate this. And that's one important component. Second, who is on your team? Because we do due diligence on the member of the team too. And also, who do they work with? Like, because, you know, might not be, none of us is like a super expert in everything. So are they have an advisors? Who are these people? Are people that know that specific field? So those are elements that they are a must-have. So before, till we start considering that.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty straightforward. So first of all, is it on strategy? If not, a very quick polite decline, good luck, right? Second is the science. You know, once I get into the science and I do the diligence, the reason I ask so many questions is because I like the dialogue back and forth with the company. I like to see how the questions are answered. I like to hear inflections in people's voices, watch their body language, see, you know, just how it would be to work with that individual group of people. That does get to the people. When you make an investment, I think some investments last longer than a lot of marriages. So you really have to like the people that you're working with. And I always try to meet with them face to face. I like to get a sense of, you know, how, of course, when you're looking to invest, it's like it's like dating, right? It's like, yeah, it's exciting. But, you know, when you actually get to work together, you actually get to know how is this person going to react in good times and bad. So I try to figure that out before I say I do with the investment dollars. And yeah, I think, you know, the science has to be good, the people have to be great, the founders and advisors have to be top notch, the investors have to be blue chip. And that's a perfect strategy for you know, having me come into your investment.
Yeah, we're the exact same way. We sort of have a 3 different pillars, you know, science, team, and syndicate. And, you know, it's very rare to have blue chip for all 3, you know, especially for us writing slightly small checks. You know, we reserve like 25 to 30 million, so, you know, we can't go in and just buy all 3 at once, especially if we go in very early. But we try to balance the risk, and if you're lacking in one, you have to try really hard to make up for it in the other.
I just wanted to add an interesting angle. It's also very important, the background of the people that you get the money first. Because, for example, we have observed like company that maybe the original founder are people that don't work in healthcare. So at that point, their expectation of return is not proper. So then it's very difficult to work with a company where, you know, the founder have a mismatch expectation compared to what you would expect for this type of company. So maybe the money can come in different form, but you need to be aware that the person who will give you money fully understand what's the business and what is the difficulty or not of moving forward, because otherwise it creates that kind of a strange misalliance and it's not going to end up well.
We'll keep that. Thank you, panel. I think Thank you.
change.